Now, Greg Combet, the former Labor climate change minister, also the chairman of the government's Future Fund, has come out and admitted that Australia will need to invest billions more to reach net zero emissions by 2050. Here he was.
Hundreds of billions of dollars in investment will be needed to achieve net zero. And the fact is, neither government funding nor private capital alone can meet that challenge. I would argue that a 43% emissions reduction target by 2030, only 5.5 years away, is actually pretty ambitious in an emissions-intensive economy like ours.
Caleb, what did you make of these comments today?
Well, he's not wrong, which is the scariest part, right? I mean, look, it's about time we put a bullet in this whole net zero stuff. I and others often refer to it as the green dream, and anyone who's ever worked with animals will know that the green dream is what you give an animal when you put it down. Well, it's time to administer the green dream to the whole net zero business because it's just simply impossible. Basically, everyone in the energy sector acknowledges that. Kerry Schott, Director of AGL, who's been in the energy sector for a long time, says that there's no way they'll reach the renewable targets they need to hit by 2030, which is 82%. The boss of AGL has said they're going as fast as they can and they still won't be able to do it. The number of electric cars by 2030 is predicted to be 27%, which is well below the 89% the federal government predicted before the federal election, or then the opposition predicted, which of course bolstered all of their targets for net zero. It ain't going to happen. Admit you got it wrong and move on.
No, absolutely. And then meanwhile, Nick Cater, we had Rod Sims, who is the former head of the competition watchdog, admitting that he's not sure Australia has a natural advantage in producing solar panels domestically. He said this to the Fin Review. He said there are reasons to support an industry that has a clear future with comparative advantage. What I don't know, one way or the other, is whether solar panels do. What do you think of that, Nick Cater?
Well, he's spot on, isn't he? You have to go on those things where you have a competitive advantage, and in our case, it's digging stuff out of the ground and farming projects largely, but other things as well. That we're never going to be able to compete with the Chinese in this game. We've allowed them to dominate the market in solar panels. 90% of the world's solar panels come out of there, and there's a good reason why 40% of them come out of Xinjiang province, and that's because they've got very cheap energy. Thanks to coal. They've got 230 coal-fired power stations in Xinjiang, churning out cheap electricity. And sadly and tragically, they've got easy access to cheap labour. And what I'm talking about here is the Uyghurs who are held in detention camps, in forced labour camps, forced to work often in dirty conditions. That's how these things are made. We can't compete on energy, and thank goodness we can't compete on slave labour. So the Chinese have got hold of this market. I think the sensible thing to look at is whether we need such a huge reliance on renewable energy, which puts us in the hands of China, which is the Saudi Arabia of renewable energy, whether we want that or whether we actually go for something more sensible like nuclear, for instance.